Well, welcome. You guys look really comfortable. So comfortable you might fall asleep. Wow. It's normally you're in hard chairs. I don't, if there's a survey at the end, I don't want to see anyone complaining about the chairs being uncomfortable, okay? Now, I may complain that you're sleeping, and no snoring if you do sleep, but thank you so much for coming. Thank you all for those that are on the live stream. Thank you for taking the time. As Tor mentioned, this is our third year of doing this world tour. And what I try to do every single year, especially this time of the year, for the next year, is start thinking about technology, start thinking about administrators, and the struggles that they deal with Active Directory. Many of you might be long-time Active Directory administrators, going back maybe even to before Active Directory with Windows NT. And what amazes me as an administrator back from Windows NT is that there are certain things that we need on a daily basis, certain technologies, solutions that we need that for some reason, even though all of us in the industry need those solutions, we don't have an easy way to solve those problems. So that's some of the areas that I try to focus on when I develop the content. Not only do we want to solve problems, we want to really look at our environments. We want to look at the trends that are going on around us, hopefully not to us, especially with attacks, ransomware, malware, whatever kind of ware we want to talk about. And we need to really think about what our responsibilities are with regard to security. So what I did last October was I started thinking about what are some key areas that all Active Directory administrators struggle with and need solutions for. And I picked two critical areas. The first critical area is security. And with security, there's compliance. I think that compliance is something that, especially in the United States, we've been dealing with for many, many years. When we start looking at compliance around the world, and when I go around the world, it's interesting to find that some countries have zero compliance regulations. They have no auditors, they don't have any responsibility to ensure that things are secured, processes are in place. And I think what's happening with the attacks that are going on is becoming more and more popular. Not popular for administrators, but certainly popular for governments and agencies that want to, let's say, appear as if we're becoming more secure. And I think what I want to do a little bit today is we kind of go through the first couple of topics is whenever possible bring in GDPR, because GDPR is going to be something that is extremely important, but I think there are some particular areas that hopefully I can shed some light on to give you some insight in what's going to be your responsibility between now and May, and then after May. So we're going to have two sessions on security, and we're going to focus on privileged access, and then we're going to focus on passwords. And we're going to talk about the passwords in Active Directory and what the capabilities are, what the requirements are, what is missing. And then we're going to move on, and we are going to discuss more about automation. And with regard to automation, I really picked two topics that, again, I feel are extremely important, not only on a daily basis, but certainly on a weekly, monthly basis. We're going to talk about cleaning up Active Directory. Many of you may be new to your Active Directory environment, so you really don't know what you have. So I'm going to walk you through some guidelines on how potentially we can clean up Active Directory with automation, so you set it up and things are going on in the background to help you perform these tasks. The second area of automation is user creation. And I want to walk you through the power that can be created with user creation, that you don't have to use PowerShell. If you're already using PowerShell, certainly what I can do is I can add on top of what the capabilities of PowerShell are, because PowerShell does have some extreme limitations. So I want to talk about what the possibilities are with regard to user creation and automating that entire process. So those are really the 4 areas that we are going to discuss today. To give you a little bit more information about me, I do work for ManageEngine. I am the technical evangelist for the Active Directory Solutions team. And what that means is I get to tour the world, talking with administrators, helping organizations be more efficient, get their environments more secure, and hopefully just try to solve problems that many administrators have with regard to Active Directory. I have been both an Active Directory and a group policy MVP over the last 15, 16, 17 years. I think I've been an MVP 15 times over that time frame. For those of you that aren't familiar with the MVP program from Microsoft, it stands for the Most Valuable Professional. The benefits of the MVP are I get this little pen every year, a nice little pen. So I have about 15 of those. I wear them around the house. I get, actually the biggest benefit is I get access to MSDN. So I do get an MSDN subscription. And then I get the opportunity to buy my own plane ticket. Do you notice that? I get to buy my own plane ticket to go to Redmond, Washington every year for the MVP Summit. What's the benefit for you, me being an MVP? The benefit for you is that's my email address. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, really anything about Active Directory, group policy, security, and you want to ask them directly to Microsoft, I have a direct line into Microsoft. So any of those questions, part of my responsibility as an MVP is to communicate back to Microsoft anything that you have for concerns or comments. So really you have a direct tie into Microsoft so that you can hopefully get things answered. I'm not going to guarantee you'll get an answer, but certainly at least you'll be heard with anything that you have. I do want to leave you with some resources. We have not a ton of time today with a half a day, so I want to make sure that when I leave, you still have things that you can take advantage of. And we've built quite a few things on our website to help you with that. So if you go to our website, ManageEngine.com, the first thing I want to point you to is our blog. If you hover over support and go to blogs, I blog every single week all about Active Directory. So if you come in here and search on Active Directory, you will find that, oh, there's a picture of the, hi everybody, somebody. So I come in here and I write blogs that are really going to help you solve small problems. Normally the blogs that I write are answers to questions for administrators that I get, whether it be through email, whether it be through live environments like this. So it's about 5 minutes of your time every week. You come, you read the blog. If it's something that interests you, you can take action. If it's something that really isn't geared towards you, you've already solved that problem, then it was no more than 5 minutes of your time. So this is an excellent resource for you to take advantage of. The second resource that I want to point you to is a security hardening site. Now, this security hardening site was built around 2 years ago, and it was really a solution for some technologies that Microsoft was offering. Now, to get to the security hardening site, again, you go to the main page, you hover over Products, and in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see this security hardening for Active Directory. Now, the most important part of the site is if you scroll to the bottom to these little blue bars. You will notice that there are different security topics mentioned in each of them. Not only have I been working with administrators over the last 20 plus years, I've been working with auditors. Now, as I mentioned, in the United States, auditing is a very big business. And when I say business, you look at Deloitte, you look at PwC, you look at KPMG. These are organizations that really have built a foundation on auditing. So in the United States, we have both internal and external auditors. And I've been working with both of them over the last 15 years, trying to get them to understand security within Active Directory. Now, these auditors have something called an audit program. And an audit program are details that are described in the compliance regulations of areas that they need to go in, gather information, and then analyze the information to make sure it's correct. Well, I have decrypted the majority of the audit programs that I have seen and developed, and the end result is this. So this is really for you. This isn't for the auditor, this is for you, for the administrator. So if you come in and you pick any of these areas and you expand it, you will have blogs and videos helping you secure that particular area, both for your servers, your domain controllers, and where appropriate in Active Directory. So this is a one-stop shop for securing your Active Directory in your Windows Server environment. Now, the concepts around this website are really built upon some foundational concepts that Microsoft built around 4 years ago for securing Active Directory. And we're going to get into more of those as we go through, and we're actually going to come back to this website to kind of describe those for you. Now, one final resource that I want to point you to, and you can get to this resource from a couple of different ways on our website. If you go to any of our product pages, just click on one of them, and then go to resources, you should see a link. Where'd that go? Sometimes they can be hidden. Hold on. Let's see if it's back here. See, of course, now when I do it, it's not going to show up. Actually, I know exactly where it is. If you go to this security hardening, it's right here. So some of you may have grabbed a physical book of this dummies book that we wrote. This thing is literally hot off the press. I got these 2 Fridays ago before I left for my trip. So I left about 8 days ago. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. So I left 8 days ago, and I literally got them 3 days before I left on my trip. So these are some pretty newly created content. The goal of the Dummies book is really for you and others that you work with to just get a foundational concept around the ideas of the book. And of course, this book is on securing privileged access, which is our first topic. So the two kind of go hand in hand. If you didn't get a physical book and you still want to get a copy of the book, you can actually go to our website and you could download the ebook for free. So this is a way to get a hold of that book if you want that as well. So those are just some resources that you have available to you for after the event. I will mention that is my real email address. Please email me with questions. It's part of my job as not only working for ManageEngine, but as an MVP to take your questions and try to solve the problems whenever possible. I usually am able to respond to emails pretty quickly. I am in week 2 of a 5-week European trip, so sometimes I get a little tired and don't get to emails as much as I want, but certainly I will get back to your email at some point. As I said in our world tour, I was just in Santiago and Buenos Aires 2 weeks ago. Obviously, I'm here now. I leave tomorrow for Poland, and then I kind of continue my next 3 weeks throughout different parts of Europe, and then I head down to Tel Aviv before I go home. So I certainly get around, but it's certainly enjoyable. So let's jump into our first topic, privileged access. And when I want to talk about privileged access, I really want to bring it back to something that we all have to deal with every single day, and that's a concern of being breached. Anytime you look at a breach, whether it be through some web page, whether it be some news organization, whatever it is, normally a breach is caused by one of two things. Someone gained privileges they shouldn't have, or someone didn't patch a computer, which really is exposing some level of privilege. According to the latest, biggest breach, Equifax, you all probably read that the CEO is blaming one IT person. Do you really think that's true? Do you really think one individual IT person failed to patch one server? I don't agree with that. You may agree with that. When I read it, I'm glad they didn't mention the poor guy's name, all right? Could have been a female too. The poor person's name, I don't think there is one person. We all know what happens when a patch comes out. What do? We wait to see if it's going to break something. Sometimes the patch doesn't get put on the system because we're afraid of it breaking something or we got busy with other things. It's exactly what happened. It happens in every organization, okay? But many of the attacks are related to privileged access. Now, when we talk about privileged access, the reality of privileged access is the same as patching a system. It's often that organizations choose to have weaker security practices because if we get improved security practices, it becomes inconvenient. And every single one of you has gone to someone in your organization and said, we need to increase security here or here. For example, passwords. Many of you have probably gone to your organization and said, a 7-character password is not good enough. But no one in the organization, especially your C-level, right? Your CEO, your CIO, whatever it is, C-level, doesn't want to type in more than 7 characters. So the choice is, for convenience, for ease of access to the system, we're going to weaken security. And I believe this isn't one area that's causing problems. We are choosing to not implement the security that we need. And because we're not implementing that security, we're being attacked successfully. So what we need to do is we need to reduce these successful attacks and breaches. And it doesn't matter who you are, does it? Doesn't matter if you're healthcare, doesn't matter if you're social media, doesn't matter if you're military, government, breaches are on the rise. I try to go out to this website and update this number. This is from about 3 weeks ago. The old one was at about 3 billion just 6 months ago. Breaches are on the rise. It's obvious. And if we start looking at the reality of our networks and the ease of getting into our networks, it makes sense. So one of the things that I'm going to challenge you with is really taking a hard look at the security of your servers, your domain controllers, and even your endpoints. We really need to look at the gamut of things that we need to secure. Now, Microsoft is fully aware that Active Directory and their Windows servers need to increase security. So a year and a half ago, I was at Microsoft Ignite, which is their new flagship technology conference. It used to be called TechEd and MMS, but now it's combined and called Ignite. And I went to a couple of sessions on security. Actually, some very, very good sessions put together. And from those sessions, I decided to grab some graphics to show you because they really affected me in terms of shedding some light on how Microsoft views security, how Microsoft views security for their own operating system. So the next couple of slides are actually Microsoft graphics. Why is that important? This isn't Gartner. This isn't some third-party organization talking about security. This is Microsoft talking about security for their own operating system. Now, this slide is about breaches. And you'll see a bunch of numbers up here in the upper left-hand corner. It says cybercrime is a $500 billion industry. Each breach is around $4 million and whatnot. But the number that I want you to focus on is right in the middle of the screen. 146 days. According to Microsoft, talking about their own operating system, it takes us, administrators, organizations, 5 months, 146 days to realize that we've been breached. Wow. So what does that mean? That means that someone is in your organization for 5 months before you know it. That's a staggering number to me. How much damage do you think I could do in your network in 5 months? how much damage is occurring in networks within 5 months. Yahoo just last week admitted that in 2013, every single Yahoo account was jeopardized. Now, granted, it took them 5 years to announce that, but I think they knew that quite a while ago, okay? And all of us in IT are like, yeah, that makes sense. Equifax, millions of accounts. Yeah, it makes sense. We don't like it, but it makes sense to us. But what we don't want is our company to be on that front page. We don't want our company, we don't want you to be that one administrator that forgot to patch or forgot to do something. So we can take action, okay? Now, this next graphic is probably my favorite. This is a timeline, again, a Microsoft timeline of an attack. The green is an undisclosed amount of time. The green is when the attacker is getting information about the organization they're going to attack. They're going to Facebook pages, they're going to LinkedIn pages, they're grabbing information, as much information as they can about the employees, about the organization so they can attack. Then they attack. They are going to breach one host. And you will notice that right here, the first host is compromised. According to Microsoft, once one host is compromised in your organization, it takes 2 days to get domain admin credentials. 2 days. That's it. According to Microsoft, in Active Directory, once a host is compromised, someone will get domain admin credentials in 2 days. It takes you, us, 5 months to realize that. Interesting information. So what we need to do is protect against this. We do not want to be that company. We don't want to be the administrator that allows this. Now, if we decrypt that first host, what kind of a computer do you think that is? Do you think it's a domain controller? Think it's a server? What do you think it is? It's a PC. It's your wonderful end users, right? No matter what you do for training, education, demands, restrictions, you tell them, don't click on attachments and emails. And what do? They click on attachments and emails. Do you think attackers know this? I mean, it's to the rest of the world, everyone is tired of receiving spam emails. But why are we all receiving spam emails? Do they work? It's obvious they work because they're still doing it. If they didn't work, then they would stop doing it. So one of the things that I'm going to empower you to do, and throughout the day I'm going to give you action items, is I'm going to empower you to take responsibility over these areas that we know are problems, that the attackers are taking advantage of, and you need to go to your organizations and convince them this will help in the overall security. And the solutions don't have to be complex. Some of them, as I'm going to show you throughout the day, are extremely easy. And the first one is we need to look at your endpoints. Because your endpoints are where the attackers are getting in. Okay? So let's just think about one setting. Because I know that some of you, and I don't want to see any hands of anyone that have this, but some of you allow your users on their computer to be a local administrator. I know it, and I know why. Everyone knows why. It's because they run an application, and the application is poorly designed, and the application requires the user to be a local administrator in order to function that application. You want the user to run the application to make money for the organization, so you allow it. Okay? There is software out there. I'm telling you right now, it's been out for years, over 10 years. There is software to solve this. And it solves it elegantly. It's actually pretty awesome the way it solves it. It does token manipulation. Please go research some of that software, okay? ManageEngine doesn't have that software, okay? But there are organizations that have that. So please investigate that software. It's not expensive. It's easy to set up. And I don't care what Microsoft tells you, they don't have a solution for it. User account control does not solve this. Okay? But if you, and again, I just think, imagine every one of you is an endpoint in here. And every one of your accounts is taken out of local administrator. According to Microsoft, 100% of IE vulnerabilities go away with one setting. That's pretty awesome. Name me any other setting where that setting removes 100% of something. Again, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be sophisticated. We just have to do the right things. So first and foremost, go look at your endpoints. Don't allow users to be administrators. Because if your user is an administrator on their local machine and they're browsing the internet, what level of access does the internet have back to that machine? Local administrator. So these are things that we need to address. These are issues that we need to cover. Now, Microsoft, over the years, has been developing security technologies. At the same conference about a year and a half ago, they were talking a lot about some of the newer technologies that they had, and this is kind of a summary. This is a Microsoft slide of the summary of their security technologies. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, there's actually something called privileged identities. Privileges. Accounts that have privileges. They have technologies around this. The top two technologies are what Microsoft consider to be their flagship security technologies to secure privileges in Active Directory. They've been talking about these for almost 4 years. JIT and GIA, just in time and just enough administrative access. Before I showed these two names of these technologies, how many of you have even heard of JIT and GIA? It's a pretty good number. Those that are raised your hand, how many of you heard it from me? Okay, a couple of you, all right? These technologies are flagship. Now, in this room, less than half, just about 40% of you raised your hand. When I was in Los Angeles last week, when I was in Boston last week, when I was in Chicago last week, I was talking with approximately overall 200 administrators. You want to guess how many had heard of JIT and GIA? 0. That's staggering. Flagship security technology from Microsoft to secure Active Directory, been available for 4 years, 0 had heard of it. Not even 0 had heard of it. Now, how many of you have actually implemented JIT and GIA completely? It's not working. Oh.
It's a lot of work to do it, and I don't think it's worth it.
Okay, so what he just said was a couple of things. One, it's not working. It actually does work if you have time to implement it. And the second thing he said was that it's a tremendous amount of effort to implement JIT and GIA. Okay? Now, all of us in here know how we learn about technology. We don't have time to go to conferences all the time. So the way that we learn is we read about it in the news, or someone emails us about it, one of our friends emails about us. So obviously, if I'm getting the majority, when I go around to all these countries and I ask administrators, I get less than 5% of admins that have even heard of JIT and GIA. So how good is the technology? I'm thinking it has a lot of problems. Every single one of you have heard of user account control. All of you have heard of software restriction policy. All of you have heard of least privilege, but you haven't heard of JIT and GIA. Now, I feel that the foundational requirements of JIT and GIA could potentially be the reason. The core requirement for JIT and GIA is you need a bastion forest. So that means that no matter what you have now, let's say that this is your current Active Directory environment. No matter what you have right now, 1 domain, 10 domains, 3 forests, I don't care what you have, in order to implement JIT and GIA, you must install another forest. Not another domain, a complete forest. Who wants to add another forest to what you have? One guy. That's his job. He adds forests. He gets paid to add forests, right? Now, once you get the forest added, now you have to do the configuration. Pretty tough. You have to do group mappings. And the way that you actually implement JIT and GIA is over there in the new forest, you run PowerShell commands. Now, many of you probably are pretty good with PowerShell. But let's just find out how good you feel you are, right? So let's say that on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you might be able to spell PowerShell, and 10 being, wow, you are almost as good as Jeffrey Snover at PowerShell, okay? How many of you feel that you're 4 or above with PowerShell? I got 2.5 hands, right? Normally I get this. How long has PowerShell been available? Over 10 years. What is the most important technology today overall to Microsoft? PowerShell. And in a group of 40, I got 2.5 hands that says they're 4 or above. Do we have a problem? I think we do. Okay? Now, do I really think we have a problem? No. I think Microsoft has a little bit of a problem putting too much emphasis on PowerShell. Because PowerShell is nothing more than a programming language. That's all it is. That's all it is. Now, they developed it. Great. But it took them almost 5 years to add Active Directory controls to PowerShell. PowerShell was not designed to be an administrative tool. PowerShell was designed to be an automation tool for normal tasks on servers. That's what it was designed to be. Now they're trying to make it everything. And they're trying to push it. Obviously, the push isn't working, right? Because many of you know how to do things the way you've done them. And you don't want to have to learn PowerShell. So the idea to enforce PowerShell to implement JIT and GIA is just another problem with this. Now, I think the core of what JIT and GIA does is important. Privilege, identity, management. We need to reduce the time that people are privileges. No question. I completely agree with that. I don't think you need to install another forest with that. What I think you need to do is you need to sit down and really look at the security areas, and you need to secure these areas. You need to go into these areas and make sure that they are correctly configured. And then once they're correctly configured, you need to maintain those security configurations. You need to ensure that they're correct. That's the way to do it. And it doesn't take additional hardware, software, and manpower to administer another forest. It just takes the knowledge on how to do it. And I agree, that can be a little complicated. Thus, we built this for you. Now, if you don't know about JIT and GIA, another action item for you is to go learn about it. It's going to take you about an hour. because you're going to go watch this video right here. It's a video of a Microsoft product manager demonstrating JIT and GIA live. Go watch it. See for yourself. Don't just listen to me. Go make your own decisions. Okay? I think you're going to decide, this is not for me. I've been asking the question for 4 years around the world to administrators, almost every group that I come in contact with. For 4 years, I've been asking the same question I asked you. How many of you have heard of it, and how many have implemented it? In 4 years, 100 different countries, thousands of administrators. You want to guess how many people I've met that have implemented JIT and GIA? 4. 4. Due to my math, that is 1 per year on average. Before 2 weeks ago, you know how many I had? 2. I had 2 in the same class, 2 in the same session. I was amazed. Now, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. When I actually described JIT and GIA, they said, no, we don't have all of that implemented. But the fact that they would even raise their hand and admit that they did JIT and GIA, I'm going to give them credit for it. That's not a good number. So what I'm going to recommend is that you go down this path. I literally feel if you dedicate a little bit of time every week to this philosophy, within a month, you can actually get where you need to be for securing Active Directory in your Windows servers. It's not full time for a month. It's just dedicating some extra time to it. So I'm going to walk you through the process. I'm going to walk you through how to do this. We're going to have 5 steps that you're going to have to do for every single one of these security areas. 5 steps. Step 1, reporting. You have to know what you have, right? Before you can secure, you have to know what you have. So you're going to have to report on all these areas. Then you're going to have to analyze what you have getting to where you want to be. For example, let's just talk about the LAN manager authentication protocol. Have any of you really evaluated if you can eliminate LAN manager? How bad is LAN manager? Very bad. So you're either shy to raise your hand that you haven't evaluated it, or you really haven't evaluated it, but you need to. These are examples that I'm talking about. They're in here. Okay? So we need to report and then analyze. Once you've analyzed and determined what you want, you go and configure. That makes sense. But you can't stop there. You can't stop at configuration. But if you actually configure things to be correct and you know they're correct, what is the only thing you need to do from that point? What's the only thing you need knowledge of? If it changes, that's called monitoring. You're going to monitor changes. And the key things that change, don't you want to be notified about them immediately? Now, I just want you to think about this just for a second. Look at all these areas. Groups, users, delegation and group policy, Active Directory, passwords, authentication protocols, anything in Active Directory. If you go through all of this and you know that everything is 100% configured correctly and you haven't received an email saying it's changed, don't you know it's correct? But if you go through all the configurations and you don't have monitoring and alerting, do you have any clue if they're correct? Nope. Because how quickly can a setting change after you set it? Pretty quickly. So we have to monitor and alert. So what I want to do is I want to walk through 3 different areas, all part of that website, all related to privileges. And I'm going to give you some tips and ideas on how you secure these areas and how you go through the 5 steps. Because you may be thinking, reporting, oh, that's easy. Not always that easy, okay? So let's walk through the first one. Privileged users. Now, privileged users, primarily I want to focus right now on the administrator account. How many administrator accounts do you have on your network? It's not just one, is it? Every workstation, every server has a local administrator account, doesn't it? Now, with regard to the local administrator account, we have to take some responsibility because many of us in here have caused a problem. Because many of you, do you remember long ago, let's say 10 years ago, when you would buy new computers and you would have to get the new computer out of the box, set it up, and install things manually. Do you remember those days? A lot of head shaking. Yep. But then new software came out. Ghost. We can image a computer. So what did we do? We took one computer and we built the perfect computer, installed software, hacked the registry, configured everything exactly the way that we wanted it to be. And then we took a snapshot of it and we saved the snapshot, the gold image. And then when we buy 10 new computers, what do we do with that image? We just blow it on there and we give it to the user, right? What is the local administrator password on every desktop? The same. Is that a problem? Well, not for you. You wanted it to be that way. But does the attacker know that? Are there attacks today that take advantage of that? What's the number one attack today that takes advantage of that against a Microsoft machine? Pass the hash. It's the number one attack. Because once the host is compromised, that first host, right? The user got an email and they clicked on an attachment, and the attachment was actually some kind of malicious software. Now the malicious software is on the machine because you have your users as a local administrator. What administrative access do they have to that machine? Administrator. Now can they get access to the LSASS? Yes. And if that password's the same as the rest, how many machines do they have access to? All of them. See the problem that we created? How long does it take for someone to go from one endpoint to get domain admin credentials? 2 days. We are part of the root problem. So stop making the same local administrator password on your endpoints. Stop it. Stop it. Microsoft has technology for it. It's called LAPS, L-A-P-S. If you've never heard about it, go research it. Go implement it. It's free. These are small things that we can do to increase security. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be sophisticated. Yes?
In everyone's defense of not having implemented LAPS, we do, but I mean, it wasn't free. It used to have a cost to it.
Okay.
You could still change it using the group policy before they removed the ability to distribute it with group policy as an object.
Okay.
So it is a change that Microsoft hasn't exactly been too keen on communicating.
Of course. Okay, so what he's saying is it used to be a cost, but now it's not. And he's saying that Microsoft really has a problem with communication about their technologies. Yeah, they do. Okay? So go look it up. It actually works pretty good. All right? So take advantage of these things. Normally, my job is to tell you if something isn't really that good. I think LAPS has really come a long way, and it's actually pretty good at this point. And it solves a need. And we need to have this solved because we're being attacked because of it. Okay? Now let's move into Active Directory. So here, I have a live Active Directory environment. This is going to be another action item for you. Because some of you didn't install your current Active Directory environment that you're responsible for. Someone else did. You came in, and it's your job to take over, and you really don't know what's there. Here's one thing I need you to determine what's there and what's not. I want you to determine if the administrator account in Active Directory has been renamed. So right here is my administrator account. I have to determine if this was renamed. How do I do that? What is unique about the account that I can verify if it's what I know it should be?
It has a special SID.
SID, Security Identifier. Excellent. So we're going to go into Administrator, Attribute Editor, and we're going to go down here to Object SID. There it is. Can someone tell me if I have renamed Administrator? Gentleman here says yes. How do I know I've renamed it?
I don't see the number. I think it's 500 or something.
Excellent. Every administrator ever created on any Windows machine ever, workstations and servers alike, end in 500. Every single one of them. So I have renamed this. So my next question to you is, what did I rename it to? Because this isn't the original. Now I have to go find the 500 SID. How do I do that? That's not so easy, is it? Guess what? This is step one. This is called reporting. I want to get a list of all the users and their SID. This tool doesn't even allow me to do that, does it? So we need to have solutions that are easy. Now, I think this is pretty dang easy. I'll be honest. Click, reports, user reports, all users, generate. There's a list of all my users and their SID. Quick. So now I can search, right? Because I have a search mechanism. Or it really doesn't take that long in my small environment to go through. And right here, it's 500. What did I rename it to? James Bond. Perfect. Why did I go through this trouble? Why did I do this? Why did I rename administrator and then create a new account called administrator? That just doesn't seem logical. Does anyone in here have a concern that you have internal employees that are trying to hack into your Active Directory environment as administrator? Everyone should be raising your hand. Everyone. I guarantee that you have employees right now back at the office trying to hack in. Somehow, some way. They're going to do it. Now, if you have renamed administrator, and this new administrator account has 0 privileges, right? So now we're at configuration. Now what do we need to do? Monitor what? Failed logons. If you get a notification, alert, that someone failed to log on as administrator 3 times, 10 times in the last minute, what does that tell you? You're under attack. How easy is it to monitor failed logons? Super simple. Completely simple. You go into group policy, and in group policy, you set up either auditing or advanced auditing, one of the two. Right here. Just set it up on your domain controllers, and it's going to track failed logons. Where does that information go? That information goes right here into your event viewer and your security log. Can you guys run a report of all failed logons for administrator only through the event viewer? Can't do it. You can't do it. Seems pretty important to know though, right? So we find another area that all of you are shaking your head, yeah, that'd be nice to know, but we can't do it. So what I'm going to recommend is that in order to monitor these, instead of fighting with the event viewer, you get a solution that does it for you. A solution that allows you to come in and actually see reports of historical times when you've had failed logons. And you can even go back in time. Quick, click, click. I get a report of the last 3 months of all failed logons. And then all I have to do is search for administrator. And I have none. In the last 3 months, none. But really, how many of you have time to go through reports? You don't have time to go through reports, right? I don't have time to go. I have other things to do, more important things to do than go through reports. So every single report that's available, over 125 of them, and 80 audit plus, you can create an alert for them. You can create an alert. So when any of your required configurations, administrator failing to log on 3 or more times in a minute, you get an email. Any report can be associated with an alert, just like that. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of that big list of the blue security areas. Just go into each of them and set up an alert telling you of when that changes. Now you have complete visibility into what is changing within Active Directory, what is going on within Active Directory. So if someone fails to log on, you are alerted of that. You can take immediate action on that. You now are aware of what's going on in Active Directory, where normally it's pretty complicated, it can actually be pretty easy. Because if you aren't tracking privileged users, you have no idea what's going on. It takes you 5 months to realize it because you're breached. Okay? We have to have visibility into this. We have to know who has privileges. For those that do have privileges, like administrator, we have to protect that account. So we need to make sure we know what's going on, and we can create this honeypot around the administrator account to give us an idea of when someone's attacking. We can actually have computer use policies for end users indicating they shouldn't be behaving in these ways. And we have consequences for those types of behaviors. But if you don't know they're occurring, users are going to do what they want. Now, we also, as administrators, have to know what people are doing. Other administrators, other users that have privileges. Because you aren't the only one that can administer Active Directory, correct? This is a big problem. Some of you, I don't want to see a show of hands, some of you work next to other domain admins that you know shouldn't be a domain admin. It's an epidemic worldwide. There are people that shouldn't be in this industry, and they are. I don't know, maybe they're the boss's son or daughter. Maybe they got the job and just because no one else could do it and they became a domain admin. I don't know how it happened. But where are they right now? You're here. Where are they? I'm thinking they're at the office right now. What are they doing? Do you have any idea? Many of you do not like to take time off of work. I used to be that person. I didn't like to take time off of work. Why? Because I didn't want to have to go back to work and try to troubleshoot and fix the problems that someone else did when I was gone. Because as soon as you leave and they know you're going to be gone, what do? They go do stuff. And when something breaks and you ask, what did you do? Again, worldwide, the answer is?
Nothing.
I did nothing. What are you talking about? Me? Nothing. My dad calls me like once a month. Yep, computer's broken. Okay, what'd you do? Nothing. Every time he says nothing. Doesn't matter if it's a domain admin or just a normal user. I did nothing. Oh yeah, it just broke on its own. That just happens all the time. It rarely does. So what we need to do is we need to have solutions. We have to have solutions, right, that are going to give us insight. Now, I keep hearing PowerShell. So what I would like for you to do is tell me, I'm going to go here in my environment. Can you guys quickly tell me the PowerShell command that I can run that'll give me a listing of every single Active Directory change over the last 6 hours? Can you guys describe that PowerShell command to me? How long would it take you to even develop that PowerShell commandlet? Any Active Directory change. Any Active Directory change. Every single event ID has to be included. How long is that going to take you? I'm thinking you're creating a software tool by the time you're done. Maybe a genius idea, right? Of course it's a genius idea. You need to know that. When you get back to the office, what I'm going to recommend you do is you go to reports, you come over here to account management, and you get all Active Directory changes in the last 6 hours. You need to know this, don't you? Because you're going to go back to the office. If you don't have this, you're going to ask, what did you do? They're going to say nothing. And then you have to go through your troubleshooting toolkit to try to figure out what they did to fix it. Of course, if there's a problem, if they actually did something negative. But don't you want to know the things that happened when you were gone? I mean, let's say, for example, this morning, your colleague went in and added their own personal account to the enterprise admins group. And then at 9:30, they took themselves out of it. When you go back and you look at enterprise admins, it's correct. You don't even know that they added themselves to enterprise admins for an hour and a half. Why did they do that? Don't you want to know? Don't you want to know they did that? I do. Without monitoring, you aren't aware. So let's wrap this up into compliance. How many of you today have external or internal auditors that you work with? So there's a lot of hands that aren't raised, okay? Let me give you a little bit of an insight into what's going to happen to you. And that's exactly what I mean. What's going to happen to you May of 2018. You are going to have auditors asking you for the most ridiculous reports ever. Right? Those of you that work with auditors, don't they ask for ridiculous reports? Yep. Why do you need that? You can't ask why you need that. It's part of their job to ask for ridiculous reports. I don't know why. I've never been to auditing school. Okay? Is there actually an auditing school? There actually are some, believe it or not, but most of them don't go to auditing school. Most auditors, well, first of all, are there any auditors here? One auditor. Okay, did you go to auditing school?
No.
What did you do before auditing?
I was Windows administrator.
Ah! Are most auditors Windows administrators before they're auditors?
I don't know.
You don't know? You don't work with any other auditors?
Yeah, they were not.
They were not administrators. Most of them worked in HR or finance before they were an auditor. So you're telling me that someone that knows how to crunch numbers can all of a sudden get the right report on securing Active Directory? Not possible. It's not possible. He is a very unique auditor. He is the auditor that most administrators don't like, because he's going to come in and ask you for the correct information, and you're going to be leery about giving it to him because he's going to analyze it correctly. Most auditors come in and just ask you for stuff, and they have no idea. They went to a website, and the website said, ask for this. That's what they're asking for. Analysis? No idea. This is going to happen to you with GDPR, because it still happens today in the United States with SOX, HIPAA, PCI, ITIL, Gramm-Leach, whatever it is. You name the compliance regulation, it's exactly happening this way. Okay? So what you're going to need is you're going to need solutions that can generate reports that the auditors need. You're going to need that. okay? So you need to start developing those tools now, developing the solutions that you're going to have, because the auditor is going to come in and you don't have a lot of time to go and research tools to get the information, but you're going to be required to produce the information. So you need toolkits, tool sets that can help you do that. All right. So at this point, we now have some solutions around tracking administrators' access, failed logons, what they've done, being able to get reports for that. Okay? Now let's move on from that type of privileged access from a user standpoint to talking about privileged groups. Okay? Privileged groups are the traditional way that someone is granted some level of privilege through group membership. But when I say privileged group, it doesn't have to be complete admin. A privilege is anything above standard user. So we need to look at a tremendous number of groups that grant privileges. We're going to focus in Active Directory. Now, if I focus in Active Directory around your privileged groups, even that is a daunting task. We have to know who has privileges, though, right? I mean, that's kind of our job, to know who has privileges so we can reduce who has the ability to do certain tasks. So what I've done is I've broken down privileges for domain groups into 3 categories for you to help you maneuver through documenting all of your groups that have privileges. Because that's what we're doing here. We're creating a list. So first category of privileged groups are default. Default privileged groups. Every single one of you have these. Some of you have multiple instances of them because this list is per domain. So if you have 4 domains, you're going to have 4 lists of these groups because all these groups are in every domain. Okay? We also have privileged groups at the forest level. So we have our domain privileged groups, our forest groups. We will have 1 instance of these groups per forest. Now, let's talk about the schema admins group. If I have membership in the schema admins group, what can I do? I can administer the schema. Yeah, not a trick question. Well, those will come later, okay? I can administer the schema. How often do you administer the schema? How often do you change the schema? Not very often. Who should be in this group on a daily basis? No one. It should be empty. This group should be empty, okay? Enterprise admins. Forest level group. Let's say that I have 4 domains in my forest. I can administer all 4 of those domains as a domain admin. Does that make me an enterprise admin? What can an enterprise admin do that domain admins can't? Well, let's bring another domain into the forest, right? That's an enterprise admin function. Modify Active Directory sites. That's an enterprise admin function. How often do you do those tasks? Not very often. Who should be an enterprise admin on a daily basis? Now, do you notice the demeanor in the room? When I asked about schema admins, you're all like, no one. And I ask about enterprise admins, and you're like, well, I'm thinking I should be one. I'm the enterprise admin. I'm not saying you're not the enterprise admin. What I'm saying is don't put yourself in the enterprise admin group every day. We're talking about least privilege here. It's not about what you can do. It's about what someone else can do if they jeopardize your account. Create a least privilege environment for everyone. I want you to think about the outcome of this. If you go and remove step 3, everyone from enterprise admins, and you know it's empty, and you're sitting here today and your phone vibrates and you get an email saying that someone was added to enterprise admins, isn't that an important data point? It's critical. No one was an enterprise admin and now someone is. If that happens, I strongly encourage you to remove yourself and go take care of the problem. Okay? But if you don't have the configuration correct and you don't have alerting, you have no idea. You have to know. You have to know. Second category, service and application privilege groups. When you install certain enterprise applications and services, they are going to install groups into Active Directory. Those groups have the ability to administer that service or application. Exchange, SharePoint, SQL, right? Other third-party applications and services do the exact same thing. If the CEO right now were added to your Exchange admins group, would that be a concern for you? How do you know that didn't just occur? Unless you're monitoring and being emailed about it, you have no idea. Your CEO right now could be tearing apart Exchange. Now, if that happened, you actually couldn't maybe get an email because now your email's down, right? I just thought of that. But what you want is you want an email saying they were added to the group. You're going to get that one, so you want to be able to take advantage of that before something bad happens. So we have default privilege groups. We have privilege groups from services and applications. And the final category are custom. These are groups that you have created. These are groups that someone else created. These are groups that typically you use more often than the other groups for administering privileges, because they're names that you like, you created them, so you need to document these, all right? So now we have a list of all of our privilege groups. Now we go through the 5 steps. Report. We have to know what we have, right? So we start at the top of the list. We start at the top of the list. We go in and we say, excellent, administrators, members, we're going to document, right? We have to report, so we take a screenshot. We've now reported on all the users and administrators, correct? Have we done that? Do we know all the users that are in? No. Why? What are we missing?
It's a group in
So you mean there could be users in the group that's in the group?
yeah.
Could there be groups in the group that's in the group and the users are in the group that's in the group that's in the group? This is called nested groups, right? Does anyone else have this problem? Severe problem. How long have you had this problem? Forever. So, since it's been forever, can someone show me here in Active Directory users and computers the button that I press to get group membership recursively? Oh, you don't have that button either. Huh. Seems like Microsoft missed something. I mean, wouldn't it be pretty obvious that we need to get group membership recursively through a tool that's been available for 18 years and the problem has been available for like 25? Nope, doesn't exist. But if I call Microsoft today and say, do you have a tool that can give me group membership recursively? What tool are they going to tell me to use? PowerShell. Excellent. Now, what I'm going to show you is a complete reenactment of what happened. This is exactly what happened to me. Okay? I heard about this. PowerShell can do group membership recursively. I said, wonderful. Let's go do it. Now, for those of you that aren't in the 40% that are PowerShell semi-gurus, there's one PowerShell command that's the most important PowerShell command among any PowerShell command, and that is?
Get help.
Get help, exactly. Get help, okay? Now the way this works is you type get help and then the word that you're looking for, and it'll give you all the information, commands and everything related to that. So I'm looking for group. Excellent. All right, synopsis. Groups, objects that contain the same value for, what? It's not what I'm looking for, but it's the only thing it gave me. Now, when I got this, of course, I went to the authoritative information about PowerShell, which is the internet. So I went to the internet and I did a search trying to find group members, and it said that I was using the wrong version of PowerShell. For those of you that aren't savvy with PowerShell, there's plenty of different versions of PowerShell. They're called modules. Action item. If you do not have, back at the office, the Active Directory module for PowerShell, you're going to go download it when you get it back to the office. You're going to install it on your machine, and you're going to play with it. Okay? I'm not saying you have to become a 10 for PowerShell. What I'm saying is you have to get used to it. It's a programming language. So I went into the Active Directory module thinking that I had everything under control. I did get help, group, and I got the same junk. This is exactly what happened. So I went back to the source and found out I wasn't searching correctly, because this is actually somewhat of a bug. What's supposed to happen is when you type in the word, if that word shows up in any of the description or definition of the command, it's supposed to display it. But if you do get help AD group, because that just seems so obvious, it actually lists for you all of these, right? Because you'll see group right here. Get AD group member, right there. It's not even get AD group, it's get AD group member. Now, this is actually not too bad. So I do get AD group member administrators recursive. Now, how many of you feel comfortable giving that report to your auditors? Maybe him is fine, because he used to be an administrator. But do you think someone that was in finance 6 months ago is going to understand what you just gave them? Now, for those of you that haven't dealt with auditors before, earmuffs, okay? Auditors, if they don't get the right information, they're going to return and ask for it again. Your job is to eliminate those returns. You give them this, I guarantee they're coming back. It's going to happen. When you get into GDPR, you think you're giving them information because you understand it, but they're going to look at it and go, I don't know what this is. What is this? Part of your job is to explain to them, teach them their own job, because they're not going to know. So instead of trying to use PowerShell and then formatting this information into some type of semblance that they can understand, again, the report should be really easy. Why not have a tool that allows you to click on reports, click on groups, go to group members, get the details, administrators, I want all the users, generate it, there's my list, and I export into a PDF, done. That seems a little easier to me than the pain that Microsoft sent me through with trying to figure out how to get group membership recursively in PowerShell. Again, you will learn one of your jobs when working with auditors is to reduce your interaction with them, because they really don't know the technology like you do. So ideally, you want to generate the reports automatically for them. Automatically. So they just have access at any time they want. Because that's what a lot of auditors want. And I believe they deserve it. Wouldn't it be great for you to just have a repository of reports generated on a time frame that you want, that you can go get at any time? Fantastic. Wonderful. Why not go to your scheduled reports? You can create a schedule, and you can actually go in and get administrators at whatever interval you want, daily, monthly, weekly, and just put it out there. give them access to the repository, so you have access, they have access, and they're just out there. You don't have to generate them. I'm trying to make you efficient. I'm trying to actually give the person that needs the report the information whenever they want it. It'll be dated, time-stamped, everything is out there. Can you do this in PowerShell? Absolutely. How many groups do you have to do this with? All of them. When any one changes, you have to go into the PowerShell script, you have to tweak it, test it, verify it. Here, I just go into the schedule report, tweak it, done. I'm trying to make things easy for you. We're only at step 1. We're at step 1. We still got 4 more left. All right? Step 2, now that we have the report, we simply analyze it, and then we go and configure it. Okay? So we configure the report. I'm sorry, the group membership, not the report. We configure the group membership. How many of you right now at this very second, have 100% knowledge of the members of your domain admins group? Before you raise your hand, remember the person back at the office. They just changed domain admins, just now. How many of you right this very second know the members of your domain admins group? I got 3. How many of you feel you need to know? We have a mismatch. How come the rest of you don't know? Oh, I know. I know exactly why. Because you are trying to use this as a solution. Can this even do what you want? Can this even send an email to you when the domain admins group changes membership? It can, believe it or not, right? If I go in here and I go to my group changes, well, I don't have any, so let's go here. It's the same, it's just an event, and I can associate a task, and one of the tasks that I can do is I can send an email. But there's a little glitch. It's if any group changes membership. Any group, you're going to get an email. Any and every group, if someone is added or removed to that group, you get an email. How many times do other groups change compared to domain admins? How quickly are you going to shut this off? Quickly, right? It just doesn't, it doesn't go far enough. But watch this. If someone goes into my Active Directory environment and they change domain admins, as soon as OK is hit, I get an email. Right here. Immediately. Your phone's going to ring. Your phone's going to vibrate. You are going to get an email. Whatever it is, however you have your phone set, you're going to get notification that someone was added or removed to domain admins. Immediately. You need this level of communication. You have to know when your privileged groups are changing. If you don't know when your privileged groups are changing, you don't know what you have. How difficult is it to get all 3 categories into an alert? Super simple. Configuration, group modification. This modified admin group report is already there. All you have to do is add in your groups. You hit edit, and you hit the plus sign, and you add in all the groups. That's it. That's all you do. Done. As soon as you add it in here and you have an alert associated with it, you're done. That's the only administration you need to do. I would like for you to now start from scratch with PowerShell. And if any user is added or removed to the 1,000 privileged groups in Active Directory, I would like for you to send an email in real time that that's occurring. And I'm sure it's possible. But when you're going through that path, I've done 10 or 20 other things because my time is more valuable than working with PowerShell to create an alert. Okay? We have to use the right tool for the job. We have to use the right tool for the job. All right, so we've now discussed privileged users and privileged groups. Now let's go to the third area, service accounts. With service accounts, we have a concern as an admin that if the service account is manipulated in any way, the service is going to break, and if the service breaks, no one has access to the data that's in the service, so that's a problem. We have downtime. Okay? Now, for those of you that have dealt with auditors, how many of you have had an auditor come to you and complain about the service account password? Anyone? You've never had an auditor come to you and say, the service account password hasn't been changed? Yeah? This is one of the things you look for, right?
Someone told me to check up when I was administrator.
What's that?
When I was administrator.
When you were an administrator. So now you're an auditor torturing the administrators like the auditors used to torture you. Yeah, see? Payback. All right? Guarantee you one of the things that they're going to be looking at with GDPR is the data that are in databases in the service account that's running those databases. I guarantee it. So this is the way it's going to go down. They're going to come and ask you for information about users in Active Directory. You're going to generate a report of all the users in Active Directory and all of their properties. Last time they changed the password, the last time they logged on, all of this information. They're going to go analyze the information. They're going to come back to your office. Remember the one rule about auditors? We don't want them coming back, but they're going to come back, I guarantee it. And they're going to have a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper, they're going to have a list of users that haven't had their password changed in the appropriate amount of time. And they're going to ask you the worst question they can ask you. Why haven't you changed the password for these accounts? You know they're service accounts, but you have to give them an answer that makes them leave and not come back. Now, for all administrators around the world that have dealt with this, every administrator gives me the same reason that they tell the auditor they haven't changed the password. What do you think that reason is? Why can't you change passwords for service accounts? It'll stop working. It'll break the service. Well, the auditor looks at you and goes, oh my gosh, it's going to break. Oh, if it's going to break it, I'm okay, thanks. And they leave. But isn't that a big fat lie? Isn't it? Because if you go into Active Directory and reset the password and then go to the service and reset the password to the same password you just set in Active Directory, won't it work? Yes. But you can't tell the truth. Right? Because what's the truth? I really don't know where it's configured. I don't know. Because that's the answer. And I know it's the answer. I've been in your shoes. I've had to work with auditors. I've been the auditor working with administrators. So, one of the very first things that I did when I came to ManageEngine is I went to the developers and I said, can you create a solution for me that'll solve this? The solution is, or the problem is, I don't know where my service accounts are configured. So we, inside of our free Active Directory tools, created this service account management piece. You simply, in the drop-down, it'll enumerate all of your servers in Active Directory. You select them all, and then you go and get service accounts. No agent required. It's using credentials. That's why you have credentials. And it gives you back all the service accounts on all of those servers. Many of these are default, which you really don't care about. So we even gave you a filter. You could get a listing of all the service accounts on all the Windows servers for Windows services. If you want to know the service, you can go get associated services too. All right? Now you know. And what you want as an administrator is if someone goes into Active Directory and they happen to go to your service account and right-click and disable, what do you want to know? That occurred, right? How quickly? Because how do you know now? How are you notified today if someone disables a service account? Yeah, but how do you know it stopped working? Somebody complains. You get a phone call, don't you? What does that phone call sound like? Something like this? Okay, the phone rings, you pick it up, and the person on the other end says, yeah, it's not working. And you're like, who is this? Right? They're like, well, this is Joe in finance. All right, Joe in finance, what isn't working? The thing on my desktop. Right? What good information do you actually get from this conversation? Nothing. And why? Does the end user really have any clue? No. So what do you get to do? Well, it could be the network card. It could be the switch or router. It could be the actual server. It could be the server. You have no idea what the problem is. But you start small and you work out. Right? But what if, when someone disabled the account, you got an immediate email saying that happened? It's going to change the way you administer Active Directory. It's going to make you efficient, and overall, it's going to secure your Active Directory environment. Do this for all those areas to harden your machines, and now all you wait for are emails. If you don't get an email, you know things are good. Because all I did is I went into AD Audit and I created a report, right? A custom report for service account modifications. And I added in all of my service accounts from the free tool. That's why the free tool is there, to give you a list of all of them. And then I said, if anything changes with any of these accounts, let me know. Because even a small change can break the service. So I want to know if anything changes. And then I associated an alert with it, and you'll see my alerts right here. I have alerts for everything. Because they're so important. And you don't have vision into the security log across all of your domain controllers to know when things change. It's far too complicated. Microsoft doesn't give you a tool. They give you the security log. So you need to have vision into this. But if you can go into all those security areas and you can evaluate what you have, configure it correctly, and then monitor changes and be notified of those changes, it really completely flips upside down the concepts around Active Directory and security. Now, another important area of security in Active Directory are passwords. Passwords are extremely important. Today, most organizations are relying on passwords to secure user accounts and access to the network. We all would like to have multi-factor authentication, but we just haven't got there yet. We go back to the very first graphic I showed you. Is multi-factor authentication convenient? Not for anyone, okay? That's why many of us haven't implemented it. But if we go back to our 5 steps, this is just another security area. We have to report correctly and go all the way through the steps to know what we have and what's possible. So let's first of all talk about the domain password policy. For those of you that have never been asked this question from an auditor, guess what? It's coming. It's coming. They're going to ask you for the domain password policy for the domain users. Now, I've been talking about passwords now since Windows NT, a long time. And still today, I find that administrators don't correctly report on the domain password policy. Still today, 18 years after Active Directory, and it hasn't changed. 18 years later, still reporting incorrectly. So I go back to my 5 steps. Step 1 isn't always easy. So when you leave for your break, you're going to know how to correctly report on the domain password policy. Going into group policy, let's go to group policy management, which should be here. Go to group policy management, default domain, settings, security settings, password policy. Take a screenshot of that. If you're doing that today, stop. Stop doing it. It's an absolute waste of time. Tells me nothing. I reported on a file, and I have no idea what the domain password policy is. That is the domain password policy in that file, but I have no assurance that that's actually in place. Okay? The correct way to report on the domain password policy is to use a built-in tool. Every Windows machine has it. seccpol.msc. SecPol. And inside of SecPol, it tells me what the actual settings are on this machine. Now, this is what many administrators and auditors produce and ask for. This is reality. Do we have a problem? Yeah, we have a big problem. We don't even require a password. But the report said we did. We have to report correctly. Now, when we start evaluating this whole idea around passwords, if we ignore this and we look at this, how good is this security? This is the default password policy in Windows. How good is that security? How quickly can someone break into a password with 7 characters? If you don't believe me, again, I'll point you to another resource. Right here, if you go to our web page, products, AD Self-Service Plus, go to documents, white papers. I wrote a white paper early in the year about passwords and hacking passwords. Inside of this white paper is a link to another white paper from the NTT group. I'm begging you, go read that white paper. It is amazing, the information that's in it, okay? It talks about how they built a server to break into passwords, and they can break most passwords in less than a day with the server. They actually don't use pass the hash, they use breaking of passwords. It also describes in that white paper some of the things that can be done to increase password controls. One of the things they talk about, because it is so prevalent in tools such as this one, right? So if I go to a tool that breaks passwords, like Kane, and I go to cracking of passwords, you'll see that I have some very distinct things that I need to have. Dictionary. There are password cracking tools that use hacking dictionaries to break into passwords. And it just goes through the list and sees if it's the same. Can I add a dictionary to Windows so that users can't use words in one of these hack dictionaries? Nope. Wouldn't it be great though? I would eliminate one piece of this hacking tool if I could do that. I start looking at brute force attacks. Brute force attacks require the attacker to go in and define the character space. Now, normal passwords require how many characters of the 4 possible characters? Password complexity requires how many character types? What are our character types? Lowercase, uppercase, number, and special. What does complexity require? 3, correct? Now, your users, if they have 4 options, lower, upper, number, and special, which 3 do they use? Lower, upper, number. Do you know I get that answer from every administrator around the world? So if I'm an attacker, which character space am I never going to look at? Special, because it's going to reduce my time to hack in. Can I require that someone put in a special character using Microsoft technology? No, not possible. So we know the hacks, we know the attacks, we just don't have the technology to help out with this. So without the technologies, we are stuck with weak passwords. So one of the things that we did is we went in and looked at this and said, maybe we should enhance passwords. So we created an AD Self-Service Plus, the password policy enforcer, which we can import a dictionary. We can force special characters, even multiple special characters. We need, as administrators, to empower our organizations to increase security where it's obvious. It doesn't have to be complex. Now, if you decide to do this, and your user is now trying to reset the password like they've done for the last 20 years without a special character, and they don't understand that they have to put a special character, what's going to happen? They're going to call you, okay? We don't want them to do that. So what we want to do, again, with AD Self-Service Plus, is when someone tries to change their password, sorry, I'm logged on as the wrong person. Let's log off. Derek does not have the policy for AD Self-Service Plus, which shows you that it's policy-driven and I can target different users. But Tom does. So when Tom tries to change his password, why don't I just communicate with Tom all the details of the password policy? These are just some of the things that you can get with increasing controls over the password and also empowering your users to be more successful. Yes?
Do the user read that?
What's that?
Do they read that text?
Do they read it?
Yeah.
I don't control that.
Doesn't read things.
Well, yeah, but I feel you're correct. But when they call, what do you say? Did you read it? And then the next time they're going to read it. They will read it next time. Yes?
I have a question from the live stream. I will read it for you.
Okay.
We have a policy that deletes all in a local administrator group, then add back domain admins, a local admin group, and some more. The idea is to wipe bad users added and add back good users and groups. It gives much noise in the reporting of group change. Could it be circumvented, workaround?
So I'm going to decrypt what I think I heard. So through group policy, you can actually wipe out group membership and then build it back. Well, if that's doing that every single time, then of course, you're going to see that in the logs. And if you're auditing that and seeing that in the reports, that is going to be an outcome of that. You can actually go into like an AD Audit Plus and you can eliminate some of those groups or some of those objects from showing up in certain reports, but you may actually miss some stuff. So I would, first of all, I know that some organizations are doing this, but it is very chatty. It's also doing it every single time, and it can cause some other issues. So what I would do is I would not do as much of that in terms of wiping it out completely and then rebuilding it. I would do just the small pieces of what you want to do instead of trying to recreate everything from scratch every single time. That'll reduce some noise. But if you're doing this, of course it's a change, and it's going to show up in the logs. Now, of course, all the reports that we have, you can actually go in and you can filter. So you can create filters. Well, what I would do in this particular case, if I go back to AD Audit Plus, is I can create custom reports that don't include all of those groups. I can create alerts that don't include all those groups. So I can go to configuration, I can go to group modification, and just like I showed you here, I just wouldn't include those groups in the main reports. Okay? So that's the approach that I would take with that. Okay? So in these first couple of sections, we talked about security. We talked about 3 different types of privileges, and we walked through our 5 steps. The goal is for you to know when these privileges change. So now you are in tune with who currently has privileges. Then we talked about passwords. We're lacking some controls with passwords, so I showed you in AD Self-Service Plus how you can actually set up the enforcement to now increase password controls. We're going to take a half an hour break. When we come back from that, we're going to switch directions and we're going to focus more on automation compared to security. Let's take a break.